If you like listening to Warriors in Their Own Words, check out our other show, the Medal of Honor podcast. The link is in the show description. I'm Ken Harbaugh, host of Warriors in Their Own Words. In partnership with the Honor Project, we've brought this podcast back at a time when our nation needs these stories more than ever. Warriors in Their Own Words is our attempt to present an unvarnished, unsanitized truth of what we have asked of those who defend this nation. Thank you for listening, and by doing so, honoring those who have served. Today, we'll hear from Master Chief Constructionman John McCully. McCully served as a Navy Seabee during Vietnam and fought in the Battle of Dong Xoai. During the battle, his battalion thought he was burned alive, but he escaped and spent over 48 hours on the run, hiding from VietCong forces without any food, water, or ammo.
I'm Johnny McCully, McCully, former Master Chief of the Seabees. I was Master Chief for the U.S. Navy Seabees from 1973 to 1977 when I retired. The Seabees were formed in 1942 by Admiral Morrell. He was Chief of Civil Engineers at that time. It was formed to meet immediate construction needs throughout the world, but prior to that, we had small jobs going on, well, some large jobs also going on, but it was all being done by contract, especially what they call the PAB, the Pacific Naval, PNAB, Pacific Naval Air Bases in the Pacific. Those people were on Midway, Guam, Wake Island, places like that. They were very much in danger out there with the Japanese attack, because if they offered resistance and they were captured, they'd be tried as guerrillas because they were not in the military. That idea came to origin in World War I. They had a construction regiment formed at Great Lakes Naval Station in Great Lakes, Illinois. And that was filled up and started by, at that time, a Lieutenant Allen and some other people, later Captain Allen, Captain Smith, and some of those people. Later in 1937, they were on staff at the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, or at that time, the Bureau of Yards and Docks. The nomenclature of the name changed in 1965, I believe it was. But same organization doing the same work. The idea of having a construction force to go forward and do work, the men at Great Lakes originally was just to work at Great Lakes building housing at that time, so being tents and such as that to take care of the influx of all the recruits coming in there. They got pretty good at their job, so near the end of the war, they went to France. They put some of the antennas on the Eiffel Tower over there for the Marconi wireless, and also did some pier work in France. But after the war, after World War I, they was basically established, and they weren't known as Seabees at that time. But that put the idea in these lieutenant commanders' heads at that time. So they inserted these plans in these ideas into the war plans, and they were serving on Admiral Morrell's staff. Admiral Morrell was the Chief Civil Engineers all the way through World War II. I joined the Navy in 1947, and August 1947, I was 17 years old. We had a different outlook on life than a lot of people have today. You know, our older brothers had all been in service. We had to get in there. So I joined the Navy, went out to San Diego to recruit training, received orders to a destroyer ship, and the ship came in, and they said, no, we're not taking anybody aboard. We're being decommissioned. So I was still sitting over at the receiving station, and that was there in San Diego. One day, the bosun came out and read a set of orders, said the following men will muster in the morning with their sea bags and go to Port Hueneme, California, Well, that's Port Hueneme, we found out later. And we went up there and we rode the train up. We arrived. They took us out. The truck picked us up, took us out to the base. They said, fall in. Of course, we were all just raw recruits right out of boot camp. We fell in like we'd been taught according to height and in two ranks. And there we were. And the guy came out, split us down the middle and say, you men on this side, you're going to be electricians. You men on this side are going to be drivers. That's the way they classified you. All the tall men was on our left, so all the tall people end up as equipment operators or construction drivers, bulldozers, cranes, such as that. For years, we had all the short people as electricians. And good classification system worked great for me. I was very excited to think that a young boy like myself at that time, remember that I was born in 1930 here. I grew up through the Depression and World War II. We didn't have near the luxuries that we have today. For a young kid like that to be given a bulldozer and a truck and things like that to go out there and learn how to operate, I thought it was great. That was the best toys I'd ever had. At that time, when I first went in, of course, we were in a peace situation. After World War II, the drawdown was very rapid. If I recall correctly, in 48 along in there, we only had about 2,000 Seabees worldwide, very, very few. And I was stationed on Guam from early 1958 until 1951 with the 103rd Naval Construction Battalion out there. We only had about 200 people in that whole battalion. We had detachments that went to Okinawa and did some work. We had detachments go down to Karor, which is in the Western Carolina Islands down there, did work. But the main battalion stayed there on Guam itself. Myself and about 16 men, 16 Seabees, went up to what they called JCA, Joint Communication Activity at that time. Later, Naval Communication Command. We took care of the roads there, the antenna fields, put in new antennas, 60 and 90-foot poles with antennas on them for communications. That was one of the largest communications that we had outside the United States at that time. Basically, maintenance, road maintenance, equipment maintenance, such as that. We had a typhoon hit there in 1949. It's October 49, Typhoon Eileen. Almost leveled. Well, it leveled everything on the island. It didn't level the island, but it leveled everything on the island. And it was, you got a lot of experience as a young man. I did anyway, from drilling holes to blast for coral, operating dozers, road graders, rollers, cranes, shovels, such as that. And for a long time, I was the only petty officer as a third class. I was the only petty officer, Seabee petty officer up there at that station. So I felt I had a lot of responsibility, a real challenge. And I think that's what keeps a lot of Seabees going is that challenge. They've always got a job to do. And when they do that job, they can see it. It's there for other people to see. If I'd have got aboard that destroyer and went to sea, I would have probably did one enlistment in the Navy and got out, because it only leaves a wake behind and it soon disappears. But those roads the Seabees built, they're there forever. At one time, we were drilling wells out in Arizona and New Mexico and some of the desert areas out there for the Indian tribes. And that's great work. You're doing something for somebody. You're helping somebody. You're teaching them. One thing we were required to do was to give a 30 to 45-minute class on road building or some profession of the Seabees without saying a word. That was to eliminate any language barrier. You get up there and with tinker toys or something, you show people how to do things and do it all by sign language and never say a word to them. And so they can do it. We drill wells in Vietnam. We drill wells in Saudi, Somalia. Everywhere the Seabees go, they do something for the people, and that's good relations. Good public relations for the Seabees. Good public relations for the United States. It seemed like the longer I stayed in, and the more I studied the Seabees, and the more I was a Seabee, prouder I was of them. It grows on you, and it's a great feeling. I think it's the way the Seabees work, normally in teams. Not that a dozer operator's out there operating by himself, and their truck driver's working by himself, and such as that. But several dozers are in there accomplishing the same job of moving the earth, or on scrapers, pans, such as that. They're moving the earth. So it's the teamwork and the togetherness of the Seabees when they eat, sleep, and work together. Remembering in the 50s, throughout the 50s, we deployed as Mobile Construction Battalions, and we're gone from home for 9 months at a time. If you're single, that wasn't too bad. If you was married, that was a tough life. But while you're deployed, you had your friends in the battalion, your people you worked with, you lived with them every day, and they grew just like a family together. You knew that the man next to you could take care of himself and help take care of you, and you could do the same. And that grew on you. Knew what your abilities was. You could do anything as long as you just kept on working at it. One time I had a commanding officer. He had a sign over his door that said, "God created one indispensable man." That was Adam. But that doesn't apply to all Seabees. All of us were indispensable the way we looked at it.
With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Level up with Gourmet Plus options, prepared to perfection by chefs and ready to eat in record time. Treat yourself to upscale meals with premium ingredients like broccolini, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus. Looking for calorie-conscious options? Try delicious, dietitian-approved, calorie-smart meals with around or less than 550 calories per serving. Need an extra boost to support your wellness goals and feel your best as you tackle a busy autumn? Try Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein or more per serving. With Factor, you can rest assured you're making a sustainable choice. We offset 100% of our delivery emissions, source 100% renewable electricity for our production sites and offices, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in our meals. This September, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Ready in just 2 minutes, no prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/warriors50 and use code warriors50 to get 50% off. That's code warriors50 at factormeals.com/warriors50 to get 50% off.
History is complicated. The story of human progress is long, messy, and riddled with controversies big and small. On Conflicted, we dive headfirst into history's most infamous events and contentious figures. We try and untangle the good from the bad, the fact from the fiction, and the monsters from the misunderstood. Was Genghis Khan a murderous butcher or a civic pioneer? Did the Allied powers go too far in firebombing the German city of Dresden at the twilight of World War II? And how did the Marquis de Sade acquire such a sinister reputation? And was any of it true? These are just a few of the tough questions we wrestle with and investigate on Conflicted. So if you love history or just enjoy a good story, please join me, your host, Zach Cornwell, for a fascinating new topic each and every month. Conflicted, a history podcast, is available on Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you get your podcasts. I hope to see you soon.
It started out very small in Vietnam. Actually, it was in the Seabee teams. Originally, they were called STAT teams, Seabee Technical Assistance Teams. Changed their name, changed the designator in 1964, and to just Seabee teams. They had worked some in South and Central America and West Africa, places like that before, at very small scale. They went into Thailand, and Vietnam. And that's when it really became a big part of the Seabees' life. And it was like most small units, the smaller you are, the closer together you are. We had 13 men on a Seabee team. It was the officer in charge, and a chief assistant officer in charge, usually two builders, builder being a carpenter, and two mechanics to take care of the equipment, two equipment operators to operate the equipment, with steel worker's a welder, any type of steel work, utilitiesman for plumbing, water purification, all that, a corpsman for the medic, and an electrician. So we had all the jobs covered in there with those 13 men. We also had cross training. In other words, people were trained in water purification. You were trained in construction of buildings and block laying and such as that. Some of our teams worked on people-to-people, what we call people-to-people programs through USAID. That's where they went into a village and not attached to another military command within that village or anything. They worked with the local natives and to build schools, facilities, public facilities for them, such as that. The corpsman or the medic providing medical attention. Many of those people had never been to a doctor in their life. So that was one phase of a CB team in Vietnam. The other phase was we had working in support of the Special Forces, the Army Green Berets, that was building their camps up and down the Cambodian borders, building or improving their camps, I should say. We'd go into a place and build a camp for the Special Forces A team had 12 men. So we were almost identical in our abilities as far as people, and they were well-trained people. Their mission was a little different than ours. Our mission was to go in there and build a decent place for them to live, plus a decent place for their Vietnamese, what we call the CIDG, the Civil Irregular Defense Group, or the Rough Puffs, that's Regional Popular Force. Had many different names, but basically militia-type people, from 200 to 400 of those people in each camp. They got bare essentials, got a building with the roof over it, sleeping areas that they could roll out their mat on, their Tommy mat, and a place where they could rest when they came back from patrol. They'd go out for patrol maybe 2 or 3 days at a time, sometimes a week at a time, come back in, get a little rest, get food, and go again. The Special Forces was the advisors to these people, the military advisors to them. The CB Team 1104 had just finished, was in the process of finishing up a camp at Ben Xoai, west of Tay Ninh. And that was in late May, early June of 1965. On June the 3rd, 1965, Frank and some of the other men moved over to Dong Xoai. Myself, I stayed at Ben Xoai 2 or 3 more days to finish up some odd jobs that we had there. And a couple of other men stayed over there with our equipment at that time. We had some men on rest and recreation, so they did not go to Dong Xoai. I went to Saigon for 2 days to get a little rest, get a hot bath, first one in a couple of months. And then Frank told me to take a few days. I took 2. I thought that was long enough. I got homesick, went up and joined them at Dong Xoai. That was I must have got in there on the 8th of June. So I had only been in that camp. That was my second night in the camp when we got hit. I wasn't real familiar with the camp, although I had scouted it out, checked where the airfield was, found out where the gravel was, where we was getting ready to do concrete work, building and stuff. So I knew where the gravel was. It stacked up down by the runway being a wide spot in the road, about a kilometer. That would be south of us, I guess, or east. Anyway, about a kilometer away from the camp. And I'd look for some sand. Wasn't much sand around there, but I had seen some. And the reason I mention that, it comes into play later on in my story here. On June the 9th, 1965, as I said earlier, my second day in camp, I had to watch from midnight till 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up a little early, of course. Navy guy, we always relieved to watch early, at least 15 minutes early, because, so about 11:30, I was up. The Special Forces man that I was relieving on watch slept down at the end of the building where I was sleeping in. We all slept, and I have to clarify a little bit on that. We slept in whatever was available in these camps. This happened to be a tin roof building, no insulation or anything, just a corrugated metal roof and corrugated metal sides down to about a foot above the ground, and then just earth floor. But it was comfortable to get in out of the rain if it was raining, or out of the sun if sun was shining. He was down at the end of the building, and he'd made a pot of coffee for me and everything. So I got up and assumed to watch. We had to call in every hour. We reported into Saigon. Or actually, a report went to a radio down at Nui Ba Dien, which was Black Virgin Mountain down there. So I had basically relieved him about a quarter of, walked the berm, around the camp, our portion of the camp, and made sure that the Vietnamese people that was on watch out there was awake and alert, and they were. Came back into the building, picked up my coffee cup, and the first mortar round hit. And then this was about 11:45. If they'd waited 15 more minutes, well, I'd already made my report to Saigon, and they'd have thought we was all safe and sound out there for another hour. But the first rounds hit the rice storage building where Captain Stokes, the commanding officer of the Special Forces team, Marvin Shields, and some other people slept in that. That was their quarters. Wounded, some of them. The captain was wounded severely as he came out of the building. Mortar rounds hit, and it broke his legs and his arms. He was really disabled right there, but he was still alert, very alert, and kept his wits about him. Of course, I said I woke everybody up, but when you're under that kind of attack, you don't have to wake them up. Just hit it, and they're gone. People grabbed their weapons. We always slept with our weapons. At that time, we were carrying M14 rifles. Grabbed their rifles and headed for the berm. Berm being a earthen wall approximately 4 feet high around our portion of the camp. The mortar rounds, rocket rounds kept coming in. The second and third one, the ones that broke the captain's legs hit our medical supplies and our communications in that part of the camp, knocked them out completely, our main communications. So I got outside, got to the berm, Captain Stokes, so we got him in a foxhole there. Like I said, he couldn't walk, he couldn't fire, but he could still keep his wits and tell us what he wanted done. I checked the line. he asked me to check the line, make sure everybody was okay. Checked the line, got people positioned in place where he thought they'd ought to be. Shields, Hoover, and I fired M79. M79 being a 40 millimeter grenade launcher, basically. We was firing that into the gunfire flashes that we could see. And Captain called for me to come back over by where he was at. I went back over there and kept feeding him information on where we was at. And Frank moved in to around where Hoover and them was. I'm not sure exactly where because it was dark, but Frank can tell you where he was at. And this went on for about 2.5 hours. Very heavy fire. Your adrenaline is pumping so fast you don't feel anything hardly. The shrapnel hit me in the back and the arm, and we were getting low on ammo. Our ammo trailer had caught on fire. We had a little slack period. Fire let up a little bit, and Shields went around and salvaged some ammo and brought it back, distributed it as he went down the line. Then the firing all started very heavy again. Myself, my M14 got phosphorus on it from a flamethrower. I imagine it was a flamethrower. Anyway, the phosphorus sprayed to our down the berm, got on the stock of the M14, and I was out of ammo. So one of the sergeants found a 57 recoilless rifle. He loaded, and I fired that, knocking out some machine gun positions that it seemed like you'd knock it out, and by the time you pulled your 57 recoilless back down and look up, they'd have another one sitting in the position, although you had seen it actually blow out. And I believe they had 3 or 4 in there anyway. This went on until 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, it seemed like. I was hit in the right arm. I took a round through the right arm and my shoulder area. Sergeant behind me thought he'd been hit. He looked and he said, "No, that's your meat." I mean, it splattered him. But I didn't even feel it, basically. Your adrenaline's pumping and you're so busy, you don't really feel the pain or anything like that. At least I did. Well, some of them might have felt it, but not I. And so it was really getting heavy. I said, I'm going around and see if I can get some more grenades. We were out of grenades. We throw a rock out, and when a rock had hit out there in the grass, they'd jump up because they thought it was a grenade. And I had a 38 pistol I found there, and I fired that at them. And so we were in desperate need of ammo. And I went around and got the grenades. We took some more mortars around there, and I was knocked down. I laid there for a second, got up, and when I got back around there, the men were pulling out. Captain Stokes and Marvin Shields, Sergeant Private Hand, our only private in the 5th Special Forces over there, Private Hand, and they were taking Captain Stokes over to join the rest of the camp. So the camp was sort of split in three ways: district headquarters, the LLDB, the Vietnamese Special Forces, and us down at one end. Then we had a little triangle in there with some armored cars in it, Vietnamese armored cars. The VietCong came between myself and where Shields and Larry Iman and Hand was taking Captain Stokes, and came through with a flamethrower. When he swung around on me with the flamethrower, I dove over the berm. And later on, when the men got into Saigon, they got lifted out the next day. When they got back in Saigon, they said I didn't make it. They saw me get it with a flamethrower. And I was surprised them the next day when I came in. But I crawled back over the berm, worked my way through the fence, and went out through the village, and found 2 soldiers over there in I guess it'd be the area of the camp closest to the road, I'll put it that way, because directions were a little mixed up in there. But I found 2 soldiers, Vietnam soldiers. They had an old 30 caliber machine gun, and we took it, got underneath a house over and right across the road from the camp, and opened fire on the VietCong that was in our portion of the camp. And about 30 rounds, and we were out of ammo. And we were being bombed by our planes. The house was on fire. So we decided we'd better get out from under there. This house was built up about a foot and a half off the ground, so we had room to lie underneath it. Fire. We took the gun apart, laid it up on the sill under there, and started what we called escape and evasion tactics, working our way out. One of the soldiers he was spotted by one of the VietCong and shot there in the town as we rounded a corner. And I called it an alley, but it was really a street about 8 or 10 foot wide. While I and the Vietnamese was cutting through the town there, here came basically a squad, looked like 8 or 10 of them anyway, of VietCong, coming down the street, almost head on to us. I dove underneath a pig pen. And people say, how do you get under a pig pen? But in a lot of those Asian countries, they build them pig pens up 2 feet or so, maybe 3 feet off the ground, and have a bamboo floor in there with bamboo poles, and it's got holes in it where all the mess from the pig goes, and they wash it off every day. They're pretty clean about keeping their animals and everything. Here I am underneath that pig pen and that mud, and I was barefooted because I had on white tennis shoes. The reason I wore white tennis shoes, I'd wore combat boots all day, and you take them off at night and you sleep in your tennis shoes. They're a little lighter. Well, these happened to be white ones, and I knew people could see them. So I kicked them off over in the camp as we was evading out of there. The VietCong did not see me under there. I guess they thought nobody'd be stupid enough to get in a pig pen, but they went by me, and that's when the one soldier was shot. Me and the other soldier made it about another 50 feet, and we came to a rice storage building, although I didn't know what it was at that time until we got inside of it. But it had a transom over the door, about a foot over the door, and it was about 2 foot square. And how I did it, I'll never know, but my right arm by that time was almost useless, and I'd had not only the round to it, but I'd had a lot of shrapnel wounds in it and then to my back, and my left arm wasn't quite as bad. But I jumped up and pulled myself through that hole, and their building was full of about 50 kilo weight or 100 pounds of rice sacks. So that made it a good place to hide. And the soldier and I stayed in there till about daylight, and this was probably 4:30 or so when we got in there, so an hour and a half. Our planes came in bombing, strafing, because the BC had the town. I did not know it at the time, but Lieutenant Williams, who was the executive officer of the Special Forces team, he and the other members over there was running out of ammo, and they was hollering for help, and the Sky Raiders were coming in and bombing, trying to keep the BC out of their compound. Our compounds actually joined, but with maybe a 20-foot separation between them. And so that's why they was bombing all the way around, and I was in the bomb zone. All of a sudden, the building just disintegrated. Just the bomb hit close enough that it just blew it down. So here I was looking around and figured, boy, I'm really exposed here. So across the road, or this small alley thing, into a house. All houses had been vacated. I mean, the people had left out during the battle or been driven out by the VietCong. And I first looked at a water tank, thought maybe I can get up in it and hide. The water tanks are built up about 8 or 10 feet off the ground, just a concrete rectangular surface up there tank. So then I looked, I saw bullet holes all in there, and I said, I guess they go through there thinking people hide in there and fire in there, so I didn't want in there. So looked out the front door of the building, and the VietCong was setting up a machine gun position at the intersection of, I think that was Route 1A and 13 at the crossroads of the camp there. and they were setting up and sandbagging a machine gun position there. This was very early in the morning, just daylight. So I thought about what my chances was of just staying in town or making an escape. I took off across the road. The soldier was following me everywhere I went, the one Vietnamese soldier I had with me. And I ran right across that pile of sand that I'd seen the day before. So the building had been blown away, so I knew where I was at, basically. And about 200-300 yards in there, we came across the Ranger camp, Vietnamese strike force, or actually they were Cambodians, mercenaries that had been in our other camp with us over at Ben Xoai. They were a lot of them dead. I found no one alive in that camp. I looked for something that I could use, some ammo or weapons. Still had my 45. Had no ammo for it, but I had my 45. Made a pretty good club, I thought. And I found a 5-cell flashlight, so I picked it up. And I held on that flashlight all the next day, and finally I opened it up, and it had no batteries in it. So that's the way people do out there. We worked our way down to a rendezvous point where we had supposedly going to assemble for evacuation in case something like this had happened. Found a lot of VC down there. They were sitting around this, where the airfield was, this wide spot in the road. And the gravel, crushed rock that they had over there, they'd stacked up in preparation for construction on that airfield, which we was going to do something, make a little better field for them in there. They were sitting around on that, having breakfast, smoking cigarettes. We figured that wasn't no rendezvous point for us, so we pulled back from there, working away, and I was debating then whether to head for Phuc Vinh, which was about 37 kilometers away, or try to wait out the battle and see when our troops was going to come in there and rescue. As we were going back towards the road, which would be east of the camp, I came upon a civilian out there pulling a parachute out of a tree, a small tree. And it was one of the parachutes for a flare where they dropped incinerators the night before, where our planes dropped incinerators. Of course, they salvage anything they can. The soldier went ahead of me and spoke to him, motioned for me to come up. I was very leery because I didn't know whether I could trust him or not. But they had the sawmill and had a bunker underneath a large pile of lumber. And there was 2 women, 2 men, and 2 little children in the bunker underneath this pile of lumber, this stack of lumber, this sawed lumber. And so they got me in there. I asked them for water. They wouldn't give it to me. They'd point to my wounds and shake their head no. Was in there approximately an hour and a half or 2 hours, and a large battle developed right across the road from us, the clearing over there where they had cut timber for this sawmill. We came out, it looked like maybe a large company. VietCong was being flushed by our planes, being strafed by them, and they were coming towards us. So we took off for the jungle. Going out through there, our planes continued strafing. Of course, they had no idea that I or any other friendlies were down there. But napalm hitting trees above your head, you move out from under it pretty fast. One moment when the planes when the bombs were really getting laid down, they'd fall, and the Vietnamese would fall on their back and look straight up. I'd fall on my stomach and look straight down, covering up my eyes. But the woman got hit, knocked her kneecap off, and she punched her. I suppose it was her husband, and he pulled off his shirt and wrapped up that knee, and we got up and took off again, and them little kids with us. To me, that's the tough part of any conflict, is women and children. It's hard on them. We made our way back, and we ended up right back at the bunker. Within a few minutes, the Vietnamese had 2 chickens, pulling the feathers out of them and cooking them. And I was amazed. And of course, I was dizzy because I had missed, I'd been over 48 hours without any food or water, and I was getting lightheaded. But they gave me some chicken broth, but they still would not give me any water. They point to my wounds and say no. So I looked at my watch, and I saw it was 3 o'clock in the morning. And I either passed out or dozed off, but this was the night of the 10th. I came to, it was about 6:30 or 7, getting daylight, and I was in that bunker by myself. That's when I got scared. All the rest of the time, I hadn't really been scared. I figured I could take care of it. We had some excellent training earlier in our training in Pickle Meadows, Bridgeport, California. The Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center gave us excellent training up there. And here I was. All of a sudden, I was by myself. The Vietnamese was gone. I knew they had gone up to report me to the VietCong. And I got out of there after about 3 tries. I finally was able to get myself out of that hole. I found 5 gallons of water up there, and I turned it up and took a big drink of it, and it popped out like a sieve all over me. Just coming out through my glands. Then I watched, and I saw a helicopter come in and sit down up towards where our camp had been, and took off again, and no one shot at it. So I started working my way towards that. I went up parallel to the road about 150 feet off to where I wasn't exposed out on the road. I had always been trained and read about people getting shot when they're coming back through their own lines, because the guys up there is on high alert, and all they know is the enemy's out there on that side where you're coming from. I got up near there was a berm around that whole town there, and I got up near there. I saw 2 Vietnamese soldiers up there from the Bearcat Division. They had the helmets on, steel helmets. Most of the Vietnamese, the Rangers and the CIDG, they didn't have helmets or anything. They dressed with pajamas, and that was about it. But they had the helmets on. I see the Bearcat, but I was concerned about them, thinking I was the enemy, because I thought I was dark after being through the pig pen and rolling in the dirt and everything. So I unbuttoned my shirt and opened it up to where I could see white skin down here, and hollered, "Hey!" And they saw me and waved, and 2 of them came out to escort me in. They escorted me up to the helicopter. Another helicopter that came in, and it was getting ready to lift off. In fact, 2 or 3 feet off the ground when I came out of the woods, near the landing zone, which was at the schoolhouse where Marvin Shields and Lieutenant Williams had knocked out the machine gun the day before. And as the helicopter raised up about 3 feet off the ground, I came out of the woods with these 2 soldiers escorting me, and they sat back down. As I pulled myself on the helicopter, I see Frank Peterlin there in the stretcher on the chopper. And I was very happy to see him. But neither one of us knew anything about where the rest of the team was, how they made it out, or what. And the pilots, of course, they gave me one of the gunners' helmets with the earphones on it, and the radio where I could talk to the pilot, and ask me normal questions: name, rank, service number, unit, and where was you yesterday? And I'm down there waving a flag, telling them, "Come and get me yesterday." That's where I was at. But when you get out in the open, the VC would shoot at you if you stayed in the jungle. VC couldn't see you, but your rescue choppers couldn't see you either. So you have to make a choice: get shot at a little bit and hope somebody sees you. But it was a very, very quick ride over to Phuc Vinh. They'd set up an aid station over there, took good care of us. From there to the Saigon hospital, a week or so in there, to the Philippine hospital for a couple more weeks, and then the stateside hospital in San Diego. So I was very weak. The doctors had told me I'd lose 75% of my right arm, 75% of the strength of my right arm. I couldn't even lift a a cane like this on when I started therapy. But, put your mind to it. You can get over it. When I pulled myself up on that chopper and saw Frank, first thing I asked him, was he okay? And of course, he got the bottom of his foot blown off, basically right in the instep. And he thought he was okay everywhere else, And but he couldn't walk. I found out later, and he'd tell you how he got in and everything. They carried him in there and got him on the chopper. He'd hid the night in a hole just right outside the camp, and the VC went right over the top of it, basically. As Shields and them got Captain Stokes over to the camp, they were in dire straits over in that portion of the camp, the same as we had been. Lieutenant C.Q. Williams, who later was awarded the Medal of Honor also for that instance there, was in charge, and he helped direct fire. He asked for a volunteer to go help knock out a machine gun position that was giving them havoc. The machine gun position was located in a schoolhouse directly across the road from the district headquarters. Marvin volunteered. I already knew Marvin had been wounded several times, shrapnel like most of us had, because that metal was flying around a lot over. And he and Lieutenant Williams made their way over to where they would flank the machine gun. And Shields was to load they had a rocket launcher. And Shields would load the rocket launcher and C.Q. Williams would fire. He knocked out the machine gun position. And as they started to pull back, another machine gun to their flank, of which they had not known it was there, opened up on them. And Lieutenant Williams was hit in the arm, between his hand and his elbow and the lower portion of his arm. Marvin was hit in his leg, basically severed his leg except for a few tendons. He tried to crawl back. He crawled into a building and commenced to make a tourniquet for his leg to try to stop the bleeding. Two other men came out, two Seabees came out and carried and got him back over into what they considered a safe position in the 105 pits where they was holding up at that time, 105 howitzer pits. They needed help, and a special forces man came out and got him on his back, carried him the rest of the way, and this was when they were going through a little draw under a fence there. Carried him on. And he died just prior to getting on the helicopter on the rescue, and the helicopters came in around 11 o'clock. And the medic treated him, tried to do everything he could to save him. Shields was very alert and awake, told the corpsman, the medic, treat me with care, I'm fragile, and he thanked everybody for all the Seabees and special forces for helping him, and just went under. Phuc Dinh, that was an aid station. They treated me there and then took me down to Saigon Hospital, and that's where I got the story on it. And of course, Captain Stokes was taken back to the Philippines and in the hospital there at the same time I was, and he and I discussed it back there also. It's difficult when you see it happen, or when it happens right in front of you or something. I think you can accept it easier because you're so busy. You know that you have to do something. You have to go ahead with life. You have to keep fighting. You have to protect the people, that type of thing. When you're out of it and hear about it, it's a little tougher. You're lying there in the hospital bed, and you get the word, and it's tough. When they carried me into that Saigon hospital on a stretcher, I met about four of the men coming out of the hospital, four of our people, and it shocked them. They thought I was a ghost because they had seen that flamethrower get me. But we had good people. We lost 2 Seabees and 3 special forces there that night, 5 out of 20 Americans that was there. That's tough, real tough. Casualty rate was very high on that. I went back to Vietnam on 2 other deployments, plus some visits in there later on in the years. And we'd come under attack once in a while, but never anything that severe and that strong and that long of an attack again. You could take a few rounds and you could throw a few rounds back, but that was a long battle. It seemed like forever. But you aren't conscious of that right then. The time passes so rapidly because you're busy firing, protecting the people, protecting yourself, watching for the enemy. You don't have time to worry or be concerned. It's later when you're back there and said, how in the world did I get out of that? And then you start worrying about it. When I was in the hospital in Saigon, when them special forces sergeants come in there and team sergeants and things like that from other camps that I had known or they had heard of us or something, they come in there and say, you guys are the most. You stood there flat-footed and fought. So we've never had anybody do that with us before. The special forces were an elite bunch. They thought they was the only one that could do that. Great bunch of guys. Don't get me wrong, they're great. But the Seabees was right there. Special forces that I worked with over there in Vietnam and Ben Xoai, and then I was down on the CUCM went on a patrol down there for a few days. Frank and I did earlier in the game. Was trying to survey to build another camp for this special force way down south there, and it took us almost a week to get in there and gather up 600 Vietnamese to help escort us in there. So that's you don't think about the danger. You think, hey, this is the mission. Here's what I've got to do. I've got to go over there and find out how high the water gets, where I'll know how much earth I've got to get to raise that camp out of the water and this down the Delta. Things like that. You don't think about what if somebody shoots at me? Hey, if somebody shoots at me, I'm going to shoot back. Saigon was declared a safe city, no fire zone. But if somebody shoots at you, you're going to shoot back. We made that mistake when we first went in there. Said no weapons in Saigon. So our weapons was all packed away in a neat box and everything. And somebody threw a grenade in the back of our truck. Had 3-4 people in the back, 2 in front. And little girl come bouncing along the sidewalk there one morning, and the men was on their way to work, and she tossed a loaf of French bread in there, and a grenade rolled out of the bread. But reaction. Soupzak, our electrician, grabbed that grenade and tossed it out the back. He got wounded a little bit, and one of the other men got wounded a little bit with it, but nothing serious. And so that's reaction and training.
How old was this girl?
Probably about 16, but nobody could shoot her because she was in the crowd. Nobody had a weapon. That day, we opened the weapons box. We issued the weapons, ammo, and we were working building hard stands at Ton Son Air Force Base, Air Base, Saigon International, actually. At that time, this was when we first arrived in there. And everybody had a weapon. And so from then on, our tactics changed. Before that, we'd straggle to work, make sure nobody uses the same route twice, don't set a pattern, keep people to where they can't track you all the time, and all go together. We issued those weapons, 13 men in that weapons carrier. I don't know if you know what a weapons carrier is, like a pickup truck. And so we had 13 weapons sticking out of it. It looked like a porcupine coming down the road. Nobody ever threw anything at us again. So you learn very quickly. I see Seabees, and you give them a job, and they don't say, I don't have the equipment, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources. They say, okay, and they go do the job. If they'll beg, borrow, or steal the equipment, they'll get the resources somehow, but they'll do the job, and they'll do a good job for you. as a young man in the Seabees and as a petty officer in the Seabees and as chief and master chief in the Seabees, they were the greatest. You've always got little problems, but hey, you can keep them straight. I had been master chief at the Facilities Engineer Command headquarters for 4 years. I had my 30 years in, and I had several senior and master chiefs want to stay beyond 30 years, and we had a mandate. No one goes beyond 30 years because we need to open up the ranks and let some advancement come in. We got a chief down there, you got a first class down there wanting to make a chief, you got a chief wanting to make senior chief, you got them senior chiefs wanting to make master chief. So you go out when you got 30 in. And I had preached that to them and made sure that no one stayed in over 30. And when my 30 came up, and a couple of people asked me about, will you stay for over 30? I said, no, I couldn't do it. But yes, I thought I would be lost when I left. I just lived down the road from our headquarters. At that time, we were over in Alexandria, Virginia. And I think I was back out there 2 or 3 times a month anyway, have coffee visit and such as that. And I worked 5 years commercial, producing sand and gravel for all these tunnels here in the district, for the metro tunnels. And went back to work for the engineering command as civilian and stayed with them until 1994. And that was like being back in the Seabees. When I went to Kuwait and visited those 4 battalions over there, I could just turn back the clock and see myself as a 17, 18-year-old on Guam, 19-year-old. Same little problems, Have I got a place to sleep? Have I got food to eat? That's your only worries. You always got work. You never run out of work. But, I said earlier about the wake that a ship leaves behind, and we need those ships, but those ships have a hard time getting along without the Seabees because they need a place there. And the Desert War was very evident of that. They go over there, they got fuel, they got tankers to carry them the fuel and everything. But if they want mail, they have to land it somewhere. And then the cod flights or the choppers pick it up and take it from the shore out to them. Thousands and thousands of tons of mail. If they need supplies, they have to get them in their airfields and such as that we build for them. That's the way they get it. And so it's very, very evident they need the Seabees. They won't give you the money, but they'll help you. Unveiling the Seabee Memorial over there on Avenue of Heroes there, entering Arlington Cemetery. When I unveiled that in 1974, that was one of the proudest moments I think I'd ever had. Today, and this time and age has changed a lot since I was a young man. But if a young man puts his mind to it and joins any military and takes a choice of his liking, something that he feels he's capable of doing, or takes a test. Now, I mentioned earlier how they classified us by saying, you 50% are going to electric and you 50% are going to driver school, equipment operator school later. They have very good classification programs now where they can get a person classified, get him in a program that he likes and that he's capable of. But I advise him to get into something because self-discipline and the training he gets will be worth it the rest of his life. It's great. They get much better pay than they used to. They get a lot of benefits, college benefits, and such as that. So I really encourage him to get in there. If he's wanting to be in the engineering field, build things, it's some of the best training in the world. And I've had many people tell me that. Some of the people that we've had in the Seabees have gone a long ways. One of our former master chiefs works for one of the world's largest construction consortiums right now, and he does well. I've never seen a Seabee who wasn't proud of being a Seabee. And I'll give you a real good example of it. When they were building the Seabee Memorial over there, we had a contractor doing it. And I had just reported in back here in Washington, D.C. in August, September of 73, and in the process of erecting it. The men laying the stone over there, we'd had the concrete poured, and then they were setting the stone around it, the marble. And we were concerned about them getting behind schedule because we had set that for Memorial Day 1974 for unveiling it. And we had all kinds of problems because we had a shipping strike and everything else, this stuff being shipped in. So the contractor sent some more masons down there to give them a hand to speed up things. They ran them off. Why? One of the masons that was working down there was a World War II veteran of the Seabee. Another one was in between the Vietnam and World War II. One of them was a Korean War veteran. So the three masons on there said, we'll do it if we have to work all night, every night. Said, we're Seabees, we'll get it done. So even when they go away from us, they're still there, they're part of us.
That was Master Chief Constructionman Johnny McCully. If you liked this episode, check out our interview with Doug Morrell, nicknamed The Legend. Thanks for listening to Warriors in Their Own Words. If you have any feedback, please email the team at kharbaugh@evergreenpodcasts.com. We're always looking to improve the show. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review. Warriors in Their Own Words is a production of Evergreen Podcasts in partnership with the Honor Project. Our producer is Declan Roars. Bridget Coyne is our production director, and Sean Rule-Hoffman is our audio engineer. Special thanks to Evergreen executive producers Joan Andrews, Michael DeAloia, and David Moss. I'm Ken Harbaugh, and this is Warriors in Their Own Words.
This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
We want to tell you guys a little bit about our podcast. Tom and I met in college, became best friends, and then teachers almost 20 years ago. Sometimes school just does not allow us to elaborate on the topics that we find interesting, like the real shark attacks that inspired the movie Jaws, or the real historical context to Indiana Jones artifacts. Where does cereal come from? Or are zombies real? Does Ben Franklin really deserve to be on a $100 bill? On our podcast, just like in our class, there are no stupid questions.
Just two friends having a lighthearted conversation about history, pop culture, and the context of current events.
Listen to History Teachers Talking Podcast from Evergreen Network, anywhere you get your podcast.